If you've been following what I've been writing and speaking about in the government space, you know I've been talking about this idea of government as a platform. Now, what do I mean by that? First off, I do think there's an enormous opportunity for governments to make use of the Web 2.0 platform technologies, cloud computing, all the collective intelligence apps that are being built to harvest knowledge from individuals and turn them into useful services, mobile devices, social media. All of these are part of what I've been calling the Web 2.0 platform. And so in one sense, Gov 2.0 is simply government also becoming part of that platform. We see this with web services, cloud computing, et cetera, initiatives in government. But I mean more than that. And that's what I really want to talk a little bit about here. The first thing that I really want to get across is this idea of getting away from what Donald Kettle called vending machine government. This is the idea that citizens put in taxes and they get out services, as if government were some kind of gigantic vending machine. And we have these protests, which are really the equivalent of shaking the vending machine. And that's really not a terribly interesting model of how government ought to relate to its citizens. What's really interesting with this metaphor is you look at the alternative, which is the marketplace. Here's this, just a shot of a supermarket shelf. How insane is that? I mean, back before the fall of the Berlin Wall, there was a big supermarket in West Berlin called KaDeWe, where they basically were just in your face, with here is the bounty of the marketplace. It was a sort of a showplace of what happens when you enable a marketplace. And for all that's wrong with our free market economy, it is incredibly good at producing this huge variety of goods and services. And we see this in the computer world most recently with the enormous transformation that the iPhone brought to the smartphone marketplace. I mean, it was a cool phone. I mean, the Apple iPhone was a very cool phone, that first generation. But what really set it apart was when they turned it into a platform. And all of a sudden, the 15 or 16 applications that were written by Apple turned into nearly 200,000 applications written by anybody who had a good idea. And some of those applications are silly, but some of them are profound and useful. And that device has become sort of the front wave of this next generation of computing. And so, in a similar way, government thinking like a platform provider means that we stop saying we're going to deliver the finished, complete package, and that's all you got. And we're going to start thinking about designing programs that are enablers. So this is clearly a big part of the story of data.gov. It's trying to take all the government's data assets and turn them into a platform that developers outside of government can build on. And of course, this has been going on for a long time. Just take weather as an example. Whether you get your weather from Bing or Google or Yahoo or any of these iPhone apps or the Weather Channel, AccuWeather, or Weather Underground, or even little specialized site like iwindsurf.com and ikitesurf.com, they're all getting their data from services that were put up by the U.S. government. And yes, there is the National Weather Service website, but that's not where most people go to get their weather data. The government has become a platform provider for weather data, and the marketplace has delivered that in countless ways to citizens. And I think that is the promise of data.gov. It's not visualization, it's not transparency. It really is this ability of the marketplace to find leverage in that data and to build businesses. And I think we're starting to see some really important ones. But I want to say this. The title that was given to this talk was not just government as a platform. It was government as a platform for greatness. And I want to talk a little bit about what greatness means when you think about government. I want to look at some historical examples because this idea of a platform extends to more than our use of computer technology. Let's go back to our original Gov 2.0 or Gov 1.0 platform here in the United States. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There's some amazing lessons here for anybody who wants to think like a platform provider. Sometimes you have to throw away what went before and start fresh. These guys not only threw away the monarchy of Britain, they threw away the Articles of the Confederation, their first version of the government of the United States. They had a complete new rev. It was visionary. It was hard. They didn't get it right the first time. The Bill of Rights is also an incredible teaching lesson. Just as Apache, just as the Apple App Store, built into the system itself the ability for others to extend it. The framers of the Constitution said, we're going to build in a mechanism where people can change this over time. They thought about the fact that it was not going to be immutable. It also took enormous courage. This wasn't win or go home. It was win or be executed as a traitor. When Benjamin Franklin said, gentlemen, we must all hang together or we will assuredly all hang separately, that was not a metaphor. That was the fact. They were going to hang if they didn't win. The stakes were incredibly high. They were heroes. They were courageous. So, look at another great platform in the history of our country. Thomas Jefferson was the first president of the United States who started to advocate for public education, universal public education. It took over 100 years for that vision to become a reality. Steps forward were mostly taken actually by the states, by local jurisdictions. So it was vision, execution by others. And there were a lot of people unhappy. I put in there an example of one of those areas of unhappy. That's a map of segregation laws before Brown versus the Board of Education, which is only 55 years ago. So this was an ongoing project. It takes work. It takes time. Okay, the Marshall Plan. Oh my God, have you guys been, when you go to Europe and you see some of the ruins, or you look at the photos of someone like Margaret Bourke-White, and you look how devastated Europe was, and we spent 5% of our U.S. GDP to rebuild Europe. That was bold, it was generous, it was hard. The Berlin Airlift, what an amazing thing this was. Planes landing every 20 seconds at the peak, 24 hours a day for a year, right? And I love the letter that General Lucius Clay sent to the mayor of Berlin. He said, I'm ready to try it. I can't guarantee that it will work. Even at its best, it's not going to work all that well. I need the support of the people, right? They did real-life crowdsourcing. The planes were unloaded by the citizens of Berlin. And their greatest successes came after their greatest failure. They had something they called Black Friday, where they had to suspend the airlift. They had 3 planes crash. But as a result, they developed the techniques of modern air traffic control. Interstate highway system. President Eisenhower had a vision. He drove it forward. It's the largest public works project in human history. We funded the effort through collective action. We agreed on the rules of operation. But at the end of the day, the highway system doesn't specify what's at the ends of the roads. GPS. What an amazing story this is. If you read the history, you see how many doubters there were. How many people thought, even for the military, this was way out there, right? It was a massive investment for uncertain return. And policy decisions have enormous impact. You can see that Ronald Reagan, who decided in 1983, almost 30 years ago, 28 years ago, to open up GPS for civilian use, could be seen as the father of services like Foursquare. So big marketplaces take time to develop. So I want to ask you, what is hard today? Sunsetting programs. The founders of our nation had the courage to start over. And actually, this is true also even in technology. If you read a book like Inside Steve's Brain, which is a book about Steve Jobs, you see how when he came back to Apple as the CEO, he threw away almost all of their products. They had 40 or 50 different models of computer. He said, we're going to offer 3. Enormous trouble. He threw a lot of stuff out. You look at the revolution, again, of the iPhone, and you compare that with the problems that other vendors had who wouldn't throw away their existing systems, who wouldn't start over. So we in government have to seize this moment, this opportunity of this technological change represented by Web 2.0, by cloud computing, to really rethink our use of technology. Don't just do it incrementally. Really have the courage to start over. Think about healthcare. This is a massive problem for the country. And can we really use these new technologies to rein in costs, to instrument the system so that we know what things cost, that we create feedback loops in the way that applications like Google learn from their users constantly? Can we have a healthcare system that gets better the more people use it instead of the worse more people use it? Energy and climate change. Will we keep kicking the can down the field? Or will we rise to the challenge of figuring out what the hell to do about this terrible set of problems that we're facing in terms of energy independence, in terms of climate change? Education. What does it look like in the 21st century? Do we have the courage to start over, to think how we can use new technology to transform education? Right? Financial reform. It occurred to me recently as you read about, for example, Germany is defending the euro. This is like an attack by a non-state actor, the financial system, fighting against our collective good. We have the courage to stand up and say, we have to fix this in some fundamental way. Now, as technologists, we can't tackle necessarily all these problems, but we can do our part. We can do our part to be bold, to be brave, to think fresh, because that is what will make a platform for greatness. I like to leave people with this wonderful image of Jacob wrestling with the angel. And this is a wonderful poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. This is not a literal translation, but it's kind of the gist of the poem. It's talking about how Jacob, wrestling with the angel, knew he couldn't win, but he came away strengthened by the fight. And the poem says something like this: what we fight with is so small, and when we win, it makes us small. What we want is to be defeated decisively by successively greater beings. We want to tackle big problems, and that is the challenge for you in Gov2O. The challenge of greatness is to tackle big, hard problems that you don't know you can win at. But do your best. Fight, come away strengthened, fight again, make it happen. Thank you very much.